So deadline day inquiries for Paul Dummett, and it's an interesting one for Eddie Howe because this is a player who hasn't played for some time, got a cameo appearance against Sunderland in the FA Cup, a game that obviously he wanted to be involved in, and he got a taste of it. But in terms of other activity, he hasn't really had much of a chance. Newcastle have had injuries this season, and they came and went. But apart from the Carabao Cup, it's been pretty much uh, a waiting game for Paul Dummett. So the argument for him probably would be, yeah, go out on loan and try his luck elsewhere. But realistically, for Eddie Howe, he knows he's got to keep that squad backed up. And, he made it clear to Paul Dummett that that's what his role was going to be in the summer, offered him a new one-year contract. And yeah, it's one where he wants him around. He stated the importance of having homegrown players, academy players, players who understand the club. He wants them in his dressing room. He actually said that on the record, Eddie Howe. And the other thing is FFP, because if you, let's say you do decide to, let someone like Paul Dummett go or Matt Ritchie go, then you've got to replace them with squad players of the same experience, the same ability, and that costs a lot of money. So Newcastle must trim their costs, they must cut the cloth accordingly, and that's why you've got players like Paul Dummett and Matt Ritchie in the squad at the moment, and Newcastle must potentially resist moves on deadline day for those type of players, because understandably, fans will look at it and think that's a great way of creating space in the squad. But the reality is that Eddie Howe hasn't got the time now, or as he said in his own words, the ability to replace, and that's going to be a key feature today. But you never know what can happen in the last throws of the window. We've seen it before, and if a player makes it clear that they want to go as well, then that can also change things. So we'll have to wait and see on that score. But deadline day, there are still things bubbling away in the background. We'll have to wait and see what happens on that score as the day goes by. So deadline day has arrived, and to be totally honest, I think Eddie Howe will be delighted to see the back of it. It's been such a nightmare window for Newcastle, where I think Eddie Howe himself has admitted, and he said everyone else in the room when he was talking to the press room, has been uh, pretty much educated about FFP and what the limits it can inflict on a team like Newcastle. So for Eddie Howe, I think he'll be pleased to, and I wrote this more than a week ago now, that he'll just be happy to get through this window with some of his star names still on board, because, I think from a financial point of view, it would have been easy to simply offload a big name, pick up a big fee, and then perhaps try to look and reinvest it. But I think for me, uh, the key has been having a football head on, and I think Eddie Howe has done that. He's really represented his football department well at St James's Park. And underlined, exactly what it's all about. Really, it's about making sure we continue to do well on the pitch, and the best chance of you've got of doing that is by retaining your best names, and that's what Eddie Howe has pretty much done. I mean, okay, let's look at the Miguel Almiron situation just for a moment, and I know it is probably split opinion, but if Eddie Howe sells Almiron, whether he's in good form, bad form, indifferent form, whatever way you want to look at it, if he sells Almiron and let's say he did get £30 million for him, from the Saudi Pro League, then he's got to replace him. And believe me, replacing Miguel Almiron for just £30 million is not a lot of money to invest into another player when you consider sign-on fees, agent fees, players' demands, the whole situation, the whole package. And are you going to end up getting a player that can give you what Almiron can do on a good day? And really, he's a player that, yes, he's had some down points this season, but he's also, got 3 or 4 goals already this season, and assists as well. So I think Eddie Howe will feel he can, once he gets him settled down again in the second half of the season, he can get him back to the form we kind of seen last autumn pre-World Cup when he swept all those awards up, accolades, personal awards. He got them all in his cabinet back then. And then really the only official bid Newcastle have had is for Kieran Trippier, and it wasn't a very big one, as you've seen Bayern Munich trying to take advantage of Newcastle's vulnerability almost with a very low ball offer for Kieran Trippier. And that's the only official bid. The rest of the transfer speculation you see is enquiries, it's conversations, it's nothing on the table. So until Newcastle had that offer, they couldn't really move in January. So now you go into the last throes of the window with, Eddie Howe pretty much resigned to the fact he's probably not going to bring anybody in today. But understandably, that doesn't stop players being offered around. You've got Callum Wilson, who has been linked with a host of clubs, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, no less. And it feels like, there's third parties offering some of Newcastle players around the Premier League and also abroad, Atletico Madrid. I can certainly confirm that Atletico Madrid got a loan bid for Callum Wilson, but when it was all said and done with no cash on the table and a paltry sign-on fee, there's no way Newcastle were going to part with Callum Wilson. So that was the Callum Wilson situation. Then you've got the Jamal Lascelles transfer potential. Besiktas, certainly there's third parties involved in trying to set up a deal for Jamal Lascelles or Besiktas, long-term admirers of the centre-back. But again, it's got to be the right deal for Newcastle. And if Jamal Lascelles leaves, they would ideally like time to get a replacement in. But it's a gamble if they did let him go now, because you could bring Dan Burn in at centre back. You've got young Alex Murphy there, so there are some options. But realistically, to do it so late in the window would be a nightmare for Eddie Howe. Now, the other twist with that is that the Turkish trading period, the transfer window over there is still open. They can still bring players in until February the 8th. So there's still potential that another bid could come in after the window's shut, and then Newcastle would have a decision to make. But that's by the by in terms of this morning's business. But look, if Eddie Howe wants to really genuinely push on for Europe, and I think he said, look, I'm not entertaining any talk of this season being a write-off. But the reality is there's plenty of football to be played. There's still so much time for Newcastle to turn things around. And Eddie Howe will want to keep that squad as strong as he can in the closing stages of deadline day, and also going into those last 16 Premier League games where everything's on the line for them, but there's still 3 roads to Europe open, and he'll be trying to make sure that they get the best possible finish that they can.